r/high strangeness. Does anyone else have memories of choosing who they were before they were born? Edited repost from another sub for my dad, as I'll be reading the replies to him and promised him I'd post wherever I could to see if anyone else has experienced this. I think he has felt pretty alone with this experience for all his 54 years. My dad and his mom's sister have had memories like this since my dad can remember, though my great aunt has since passed away last year. I remember talking to my granny about it, and even her saying that she remembered my dad talking about it as a kid. I've asked a lot, but my dad said his memory of it has faded a lot over the years, but he does remember being given multiple choices of he could be this or that. He said he felt like he was nothing. He wasn't a human. It wasn't a room he was in, but maybe it was white, if that. Each life had pros and cons. Every person he could be looked different, but were the same race, different weight, not sure of the face. But he didn't want to bald early and some balded. Maybe 3-5 choices he's guessing. It was fully predetermined, and he couldn't pick certain parts. One that stuck out to him was he would either have a bad life with a wife that cheated on him and end up an addict and something else that I can't remember, or go balding and have a close-knit family. One of the choices were really great, I think. There were other options as well. Till find my journal later and see what I wrote down, maybe 3-4 years ago about it. And I just checked with him again and wrote everything down. He remembers picking this life cause his family was always close, and this life, he had pretty good kids and a wife, and they always stayed close. He felt like time was running out, and he had to hurry up and pick, so he did it with this one. He'd sometimes question if it were a dream, but it seemed so real, and things would all come true, so it kinda solidified his belief over the years. He always felt like it was very real, though at the same time he just questioned himself, but always remembered it cause it was like an important memory. He did have a feeling others around him were doing the same.
r/paranormal encounters, nightmare creature and movie. I don't know if this is the right sub, but I was looking around on here and remembered this story, so I'll just post it here. First of all, I'm not entirely sure this isn't just my brain creating a memory, so I might be wrong. When I was little, around 2 to 6, I got nightmares that I still remember to this day as a 13-year-old. My most distinct one is a dinosaur swallowing a mermaid, which I'm putting here so I can have proof in case this happens again. Anyway, when I was about 6, I had this nightmare, I think, of this weird skin-colored blob guy with a little face in his neck. I don't know why I remember this, but he kept saying, "Don't look at my little brother," talking about the thing in his neck. I didn't really mention it to anyone, but 2 years later I watched Wreck-It Ralph 2 and he was in it. Before anyone says this, it was probably manifested in my mind after I watched it, but if anyone has had something like this happen, let me know. Side note, the year this came out started the 4 worst years of my life, but that's probably unrelated. Here is the character OP is referring to. r/paranormal encounters. I truly saw Santa. When I was about 5 years old, I was at a cookout with my parents' friends. I vividly remember it was my first time trying oysters, and I got a 25-piece plastic tea set as a gift. After the first round of oysters and presents, all of the parents were drunk around the fire, making more. I heard bells, and since it was 2009, I highly doubt high-quality projectors existed. But I knew what planes were, and I knew what I saw. I looked up and saw reindeer and a sleigh, and I saw sparkles coming out the back of the sleigh. I tried to get my parents' attention and pulled on their legs, pointing at the sky, but they couldn't see anything. Looked up and down many times, and still saw him until my parents looked up and a cloud passed. He was gone. When I was about 5, trick-or-treating, I swear to God I looked up and saw a witch flying a broomstick. This memory has stuck with me. I begged my mom to look up at the witch, but she was like, yeah, it's Halloween, they come out to get candy too. Gaslighting a poor child. LOL, this memory I swear is so real to me. R/humanoid encounters. Feel this crosspost meets the criteria of a humanoid encounter. First time ever hearing about them using technology. A man reported seeing a Bigfoot-like figure on 3 glowing or metallic red balls hovering over the freeway about 75 yards in the air. The witness slowed his vehicle to about 10 miles per hour to get a better view when the figure began to fly north across a wheat field. He could only see the back of the creature, and it was solid black with what appeared to be a suit, or hairy cloak, sitting on what appeared to be 3 spheres connected together. These large round ball-shaped objects had a candy apple metallic glow to them. Shocked, he pulled over. He could see what appeared to be a dead dog, possibly a black and white Sheltie, hanging from the left side of this vehicle on a rope. The figure then flew across the field towards Smith Road. The witness jumped in his car and sped northeast to Sapoli Road, where he turned and proceeded to speed at around 70 miles an hour toward Smith Road. He got there and turned left, cutting the figure off so he could see it better. At this point it realized the witness was following it and turned and flew more westerly from which it came. He could not get in a position to see it again after that. R/humanoid encounters. The Penguin and Superman encounters. My cousin and I had strange encounter when we were 9 years old. We were living in a rural place with deep, fearsome forests. We often stole away when our relatives were working on the fields to play in a nearby forest. That time we went deeper and deeper into it. We got scared and turned around wanting to go back. At that moment, we saw something hiding down behind a bush. To this day it gives me shivers. I can only describe the thing looking like Danny DeVito when he played the Penguin. In the Batman movie, we both stood still, started to cry, and stood there for half an hour without moving. Finally we heard the screams of our parents and started to run like crazy. That thing must have been there behind the bush all the time, 'cause we didn't see nor hear any movement. Of course, our parents didn't believe one single word. I still can't explain what it was. Source, YouTube comment, Charles Pukowski. Believe a 100% that in abductions cases the aliens can put those visions in your mind so that the person will not be that scared. In my case, I was at my aunt's house. I was around 5 to 7 years old and I was alone because my aunt was washing clothes. It was about 7 at night and I was playing with my toys and suddenly I was paralyzed and my body started to rise and I felt a buzzing sound and felt like bubbles under my body. I thought the mosquitoes wanted to take me to eat me. I was going to the window, then I saw a neon blue light and I blacked out. What I remember is that I was suddenly being turned the same way they took me and I could see Superman. And I told myself that he must have rescued me from the mosquitoes. So, many years had passed, and I am absolutely sure that it was an alien abduction, and that they could read my mind. They knew I thought the mosquitoes wanted to take me, so they put Superman there to calm me down. They probably knew I love Superman, and they used that to deal with me easier. Would love to go under hypnosis to see everything that happened. Arqui Dennis. R/paranormal encounters. Police officer suddenly appears with UFO. Just wanted to tell you something that happened to us back in January 1978. Was living in Massachusetts at the time, and my brother and I went out after supper to smoke a doobie. And we were driving around in the little van, and out of the white window I could see a UFO that was kind of low. It wasn't a typical looking flying saucer. It kind of looked like it had wings that were arched. It was all lit up underneath and it looked like there was some kind of a boom. Like maybe they were working on it or something. One said, hey man, pull over. There's a UFO over there. I said, turn here, turn around. We'll get a good look at it. We went around the corner onto a road that went straight across Old Marsh where there was no obstructions. We parked. It was dark where I had seen the UFO. Then a policeman walked up to the window and said, "What are you guys doing? Looking at the moon." By the way, there was no moon that night. Then he said something, a poem about the moon. I don't know where that came from. And then he walked away. And then I looked out the back window of the van and there was no police car back there. No cop, he was just gone. Clyde asks what he thinks was going on. I think it was an alien checking to see if we'd seen anything. My brother actually never did see it. Source, Ground Zero. Radio with Clyde Lewis, September 4, 2013.
R/humanoid encounters, mannequin man in the mall. Something happened to myself and my boyfriend at the time about 3 years ago in 2016 in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. We were in a mall before work, in the very early morning hours when they had just opened, and as we walked into a store, we both noticed, at the very same time, a very odd-looking man sitting on one of the benches, reading a newspaper. He had one leg crossed over the other at a right angle with his arms outstretched, holding this newspaper and a small smug smile on his face, but there was something very, very wrong about him. He had a baseball cap on over hair that looked like a wig and mirrored sunglasses, but even so, we could both tell that his facial features were not normal, in that beyond the thin, smug smile that never moved, never changed. There were no other discernible features, no freckles, no wrinkles, no pores, no nothing. His entire posture was all wrong and unnatural, and he did not move even in the slightest as we walked by. He was also oddly dressed. It was an incredibly hot summer day, and he was dressed in long heavy pants and a flannel long sleeve, buttoned right to the top. My boyfriend and I actually turned to one another at the same time as we passed this man and entered the store. We simultaneously commented on the oddness of this fellow. My BF at the time said something like, "Did you see that guy? WTF was that?" Meanwhile, I was saying that guy looks like a mannequin. We then both turned around to look at him again together, and he was completely gone. We exited the store immediately and looked all around, but the mannequin man was nowhere. For the rest of the day, we laughed about how mannequin man's experimental day out blending in with us humans hadn't gotten off to a good start, and it would be back to the drawing board for the aliens or what have you. The thing about it is that for the entire duration of this encounter, it was as if everything in my body, mind and soul was screaming at me that something was very much not right, and that this was something unique. If you've ever had that feeling, you know what I mean. It's pure and primal instinct.
R/paranormal thing at McDonald's. Not sure if I shared this here before, but it was interesting and one of the reasons my wife and I don't go to the drive-thru late anymore. Our McDonald's pre-Global Panini by several years was a 24-hour store. As my wife worked until 3 a.m. and I was on her sleep schedule so she wouldn't be lonely about 4 a.m. we were hungry and decided to grab some food. We saw this guy walk up. I'm getting the nastiest feeling coming over me. Dread, despair, terror. I wanted to bolt from our car and run for my life. The guy just casually walked to the restaurant, and when he passed under the street light I saw this thing floating behind him. It was freaky. About 6 feet tall, all black except for a large white face. The face had dark sunken eyes and multiple sharp teeth poking out between its lips. It had long arms with clawed hands on the man's shoulders, and below the hips it just dissipated, so no legs. My wife hasn't said anything, and usually is insensitive to the paranormal, so I didn't expect anything. But as the man walked out of the light, the thing vanished from sight, and I heard out car doors lock. Looked at my wife who was pale, with wide eyes. He just goes, "Tell me you saw that." I confirmed, and we just watched the guy continue his walk and into the restaurant. Seeing it was scary. The fact that my wife could was absolutely terrifying. Edit. Didn't think to include what my wife said she saw. I refused to say what I saw until she said her piece. Didn't want to influence her, and that's the way she prefers it. So what my wifey says she saw was a large black shape, with wispy ends below the waist instead of legs. She didn't say she saw the face, but she described the long arms and clawed hands. She said that she'd started paying attention because she felt nauseous and uneasy when the guy started walking up, and that she was worried about him trying to come up to our car since he was acting like he was severely angry. R/paranormal missing time, mid-1980s. I wanted to share a short story about missing time. It was the 1980s. Not exactly sure when it was now, but it was sometime between 1983 and 1986. I was in elementary school. I had just discovered Saturday Night Live and was trying very hard to stay up past my normal bedtime to watch it. I made it to the opening credits and passed out on the couch. I woke up in my bed with Mom saying it was time to get ready for school. What the heck happened to Sunday? Mom would have said something if I'd slept all day. But she didn't. Doesn't remember it happening. It's just gone. Never happened. One Sunday in the 80s just didn't exist. So here's why I brought it up. In 1983, many people remember Nelson Mandela passing in prison, myself included. Turned out he didn't, and many other people don't remember him ever being reported having passed in prison. I think scientists did something that effed with reality and changed history. I think it happened in the 80s. I think that's why I lost that Sunday.
On September 26, 1983, your reality was blanketed in a nuclear war that decimated most of the world. Anyone who was instantly killed stayed dead. Anyone who was left to survive to suffer a slow death of radiation, starvation, and slowly freezing to death in a nuclear winter to come were spared. In your world the line is, "Luke, I am your father." In your world, the Monopoly man has a monocle. In your world, Nelson Mandela passes in prison not long before the nuclear war in 1983. In your world, countless little differences. But you, along with hundreds of thousands of people who didn't pass outright, were transplanted here. Or rather, the soul consciousness blended with the consciousness of your counterpart here to make one person. For you see, it was a different man stationed at that missile silo in Russia on September 26, 1983, in our timeline closest to yours. And he decided to wait. He didn't press that button. And life went on as normal for all of us here, and all of you have been with us along for the ride. Welcome. We love having you here. You are not crazy. This is all real. The day was Monday, September 26, 1983. Sunday was skipped. I'm sorry it threw you for a loop. But now you know. In Russia on a Monday morning, it was Sunday night. In America, countless passed in their sleep. The whole day was erased from the soul's memory to save from the trauma. It's usually how soul transfer for alternate reality erasures work.
r/glitch in the Matrix, out of this world pizza. I posted my experience about the guy that vanished into thin air at the gas station yesterday, oddly enough. That's not the first time I've encountered a GITM. Below is a 100% true story of an event that would change my perception of what reality was and push me to try to understand quantum physics and the way our and other universes' dimensions work. This experience took place in the early mid-90s at this mall about 30 minutes from the city I grew up in. It was a rainy spring day and my dad wanted to know if I wanted to take a ride up to check it out and get out of the house for a while. So we went up there, walked around a bit and saw one of those sit-down chain pizza places. So my dad asks if I'm hungry and I say sure. We walk into the place and I immediately get this odd feeling of dread. I glance up him and he has a WTF look on his face. I remember it just feeling completely off, having a muted hue and even the sound was slightly distorted and real. Then I noticed everyone in there had stopped what they were doing and looked over at us. They all basically looked like they were out of the 70s and kind of dated. We ordered 2 slices, wolf them down quickly and leave. As soon as we walk back into the mall, everything appears normal again. It warms up and the sense of dread is immediately lifted. We go on about our day. A few years later, when I was around 18, a friend asks if I want to take a ride up there. I say sure. We head up and on the ride I tell him the story of how weird it was. He immediately says I want to check it out. So we get there and walk the mall and it's literally nowhere to be found. There was an older janitor working and I asked him where'd the sit-down pizza place go. He gave me a somewhat puzzled look and responded that hasn't been here for 15 years, kid. Actually got goosebumps writing this out. I know it sounds completely insane, but my dad, who tends to look on the logical side of things, still brings it up occasionally. Remember when we went to a different reality/dimension/time at the pizza place?
R/aliens, I saw an alien in my room and showed them a meme. I made this account 6 months ago because I needed to get this story off my chest. This experience was starting to affect my relationship and I desperately needed to tell someone and move on. I decided not to go through with posting about it because I didn't want to seem cringe or have a bunch of people tell me that I was lying. Fast forward to today and I'm finally feeling brave enough to share. Context: I'm female, I was 22 at the time and in my last year of engineering school, still living in my parents' house. Since then I've moved out and got a job in another city. Back in April 2022 I was laying in bed relaxing and had drifted off to sleep around 1 a.m. I'm a night owl and typically stay up well into the night. Sometime after I fell asleep, I was awakened to someone grabbing me from behind in an awkward hugging motion. Like a bear hug, but more awkward and grabby. I slept on my side and would usually face the wall, so I needed to turn around to see who was touching me. My mom usually gets up for work super early, so I assumed it was her coming into my room to hug and say bye for the day. I was horribly wrong. When I started to turn around, my vision was still blurry and I couldn't see anyone standing directly next to my bed. I was confused because I had just felt someone touching me. Before I had even finished fully turning to see, my eyes had wandered to the corner of my room, near my desk, and my body froze immediately. There was this being floating directly above my desk. I'm not even sure if being is the right word to use, but it looked humanoid. This being was slightly shorter than me, I'm 5'3", had a larger than normal head, tiny slit mouth, their skin was this blackish, star-speckled color. I don't even know how to describe it, but they almost looked airy, like if I poked them my finger would go right through. I felt like I was looking into some sort of cosmic gas. It was really effing strange, but the most prominent feature I noticed were their gigantic, deep black eyes. The eyes somehow managed to be a deeper black than their skin. They were so huge and just very striking to see. When I saw them hovering over my desk, I made eye contact and my whole body froze. My immediate instinct was to get up and run away, but it was like I couldn't move my arms and legs no matter how much I thought I needed to. I was frozen still. A strange detail I remembered the other day was that when I made eye contact, all the ambient noise in the room was gone. It was completely silent, and we were just staring deeply into each other's eyes. It was like time completely froze in that moment. While I was staring into their eyes, I felt something I had never felt before. I felt the most primal fear I could have ever felt. I felt like I had suddenly reverted into a caveman or something. I felt this horrible dread, a horrible eldritch terror. I kept thinking that I needed to get up and run, I needed to get away, but I couldn't effing move. And then I heard this message in my head. I can't exactly describe how I heard it. It wasn't as if someone said it to me, but as if it was directly planted into my own thoughts. It said, "Don't be afraid," and I thought to myself, what in the biblically accurate angel F is going on? I was confused because I heard this message, but the being itself did not speak. Like their mouth didn't move. In fact, I don't remember any sort of facial expression ever being conveyed other than the creepy, intense stare. I felt a sort of calmness wash over me and I blacked out a few moments after that. The next thing I remember is being seated at my desk. The being was gone, but I could still hear these messages in my head. I'm assuming they realized how scared I was and decided to hide themselves to avoid me pooping myself again. V can't exactly remember the entire conversation word for word, or how it even happened, but I remember the gist of it. Basically, I was shown these images of real-life war, maybe the war in Ukraine, and images of war in things like cartoons and media, and I guess it wanted to know my opinions about both and the way the images made me feel. I can't remember my response, but I remember feeling that they were mildly satisfied with it. For a moment I felt like there might have been a third presence in the conversation, like someone else was observing, but I'm not completely sure. At some point during the encounter, I felt awkward and I grabbed my phone to look at Reddit, just looking for something to calm myself down. Nobody was in the room, but still I felt like I was being watched intensely. It's worth noting that I have very severe social anxiety, and I was scared as F, but I didn't feel like I was in danger anymore. Anyway, ended up finding some stupid meme and laughing at it, and I got a feeling like the being was questioning my behavior, like they seemed intrigued by the way I was acting. I remember holding my phone up in the air like, look, not knowing where they were but trying to show them anyway. There was a moment of silence, and then next thing I know I was back in bed again like nothing ever happened, in the blink of an eye. My phone was lying next to me on the bed, and the screen was off. I grabbed it to look at the time. It was like 3 or 4 a.m. I checked my tabs to make sure I wasn't effing insane, and sure enough Reddit was still open. I don't think they liked my meme.
Can you show the meme?
I honestly don't remember. It was one of those things I neglected to make note of when I was pooping myself. But it was likely something from r/nice guys.
God, no offense, but no wonder why they left.
Yay. They probably realized what you thought was funny had nothing to do with their concerns and bailed.
This made me laugh out loud. I don't know if you're serious or not, but that really rocks.
That's all for this video, everyone. Hope you all enjoyed. Please subscribe for more content like this and leave a like as it really helps out the channel. This has been my 3rd video so far that is not a short. Until next time, the Alley Ghost